The GamesBeat Decides podcast. It's on. We're about to make some decisions, but first I want to do an introduction. This is our year-end wrap-up. This is part 2 of GB Rewind. We already did part 1. Today we're going to do, me and Mike are going to record part 2. We're going to go right into it here in a second. I wanted to let you guys know that I actually broke up this episode into 2 parts. So the second part is coming up tomorrow. You'll see it then, where we discuss the best gaming publishers. Today it's the best new gaming universe. On Friday, expect the full crew to do our Game of the Year picks for GamesBeat as a whole. That's it. Let's get right into it. Thanks for watching. I will see you guys next time. It's deciding time. And, oh my God. Welcome to GamesBeat Decides podcast. It's your annual source for 2016. We're looking back at the last year. Mike is looking back in his room, and he's drinking a beer. And we're not going to judge him. It's the East Coast. It's probably like 11 p.m. there.
It's practically Christmas time. Hey,
it is practically Christmas time.
Right?
That's a good.
I got a nice Christmas ale from Great Lakes Brewery.
I do miss
an
Great
Ohio
Lakes.
tradition.
Yeah, that's one beer that's hard to find out here. They're very big on their Colorado beers in Denver. So if I was like, "Do you have Great Lakes?" They're like, "No, we definitely don't."
Leave.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they give me a dirty look. I'm your host, Jeffrey Grubb, and this isn't your typical episode. We're going to be looking back at 2016. This is going to go out on a Monday. We're recording it on the Friday before Christmas. I just wanted to kind of give you guys a heads up in case like something big happened, like Nintendo released the Switch on Christmas instead. That's the reason we're not talking about it. With me is my cohort and my subordinate, Mike Minotti.
Well, I got my Christmas Switch, that's for sure.
What was your Christmas wish?
No, Switch.
Oh, you got your
Switch. I was doing a thing.
Yeah, you did a thing, and I didn't get it. I can't hear you.
You just completely ruined it.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad I did. Mike, you got any big Christmas plans?
Yeah, let's hang out with family a lot. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
Do you have any favorite video game related Christmas memories?
Christmas, not so much. Christmas, it's the things I remember are actually getting the games themselves, not necessarily playing them.
Sure.
Like I remember.
That's kind of what I meant.
Yeah, I remember getting I would always get a game for my birthday and a game for Christmas. I got like Punch Out for an early Christmas when I was young, and I don't know, a couple of Super Nintendo games. Maybe I think I actually did get a Super Nintendo. Was the one big Christmas console I got. Otherwise, it was usually for a birthday or something else.
Yeah.
Like that. How about you?
The one console I can really remember getting for birthday was a PlayStation 2 because that was still pretty hard to find that year it came out. And my dad did a thing where he had us all open, before he got the console, he had us all open present at the same time. It was the PlayStation 2 controllers and that old ugly yellow packaging that they were in for some reason. Yeah. And it was at first we were like, oh, our dad's dumb. We don't have this system, Then we opened the PlayStation 2. It is cool when you get that new system, especially back then because you didn't have to download updates. You just plugged it in and it's you get that, you mix Christmas with that feeling of playing a console for the first time, which is always fun, right?
Right. It's one of the reasons I think I really like Christmas is because I associate it so much with setting up the new console or putting in that new game for the first time. Mm-hmm. I think Thanksgiving, I associate actually more with playing games because it's a long weekend and you sit down and you could play one game for that entire time. But Christmas, I don't know. It was always just kind of getting the stuff and hanging out with family. But yeah, this year, you're hanging out with family. Me and Steph are in Denver, and she's super pregnant. So it's the first Christmas that we've been out here. We're not heading home. So I think as long as she doesn't go into labor, I'm probably going to play a bunch of Christmas-related video games. I want to try that Hitman stage. They did a Christmas level for that. Can you think of anything that stands out in games like Christmas events?
The only one I can think of is Christmas Nights.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to play that.
That was awesome because that was for people who don't know, Nights was the weird 2D flying platformer with some 3D platforming sections. Yeah, that was on the Sega Saturn. It was kind of their Sony had Crash Bandicoot and Nintendo had Mario 64 and Sega had Nights, and it was such a Sega game at that time. It was just so kind of weird, and they released a standalone Christmas version of the game. It was just the one level with a lot of fun unlockable stuff like Christmas things, and you can even unlock this mode where you played as Sonic running around in the world in 3D, which at that time was a big deal because he hadn't had a 3D Sonic game. It was just it was really cool. It was the first time I ever had a Christmas game, and it just actually it just came with some Sega magazine or something. Like, you didn't have to buy a game. You just bought a magazine, you got this thing. It kind of worked as a demo in a weird way, but it was really creative and cool. Like, they had Santa Claus flying around and his sleigh in the background.
Yeah, it stood out in a way that, you're right, it was kind of basically demo, but it stood out way more just because of the Christmas stuff. And yeah, so that's definitely what I'm going to boot up. I'm wondering if I'm going to have to emulate it, because for some reason I feel like I remember Nintendo and Sega released it on a Wii or Wii U a few years ago, but maybe I'm making that up.
I don't know. I have my Saturn plugged in right now. I'm not super sure if I have Christmas nights. I think I do. I think I could probably play it on Christmas. Yeah, so that'd be fun.
You have to like set the date on your Saturn and make sure it's right, because I'm sure it's not.
Exactly.
Okay, we're going to get into stuff. We're going to talk about, like I said, a couple end-of-year topics. Best gaming universes and best game company. Before we do that, though, I want to let everyone know you can get more of us on GamesBeat.com. You can always email us at gamespluspodcast@venturebeat.com. That's the plus sign in there. Finally, if you like what you're listening to, subscribe. We're on iTunes. We're on Google Play. We are on many of the podcatchers for catching pods. And yeah, if you're on iTunes, please leave us a review. It's the best way for people to discover the show. So yeah, Mike, I think we should jump into it with this first topic, the best new gaming universes. And I've actually, I did have a couple sitting right here to the side. Let me bring it back up. There we go. All right. Hey, that actually worked out well. I've kind of just written down a couple to get us started, but before we do that, I'm wondering if you want to add anything of your own to the list.
Nope, seems about right. We'll see if we go along. So,
I think you and I feel pretty strongly about what might win here.
I
maybe
know
we shouldn't start with that one. Maybe we should start with a couple of these others before we kind of get into that. And I think the one I would probably want to start with is The Witness. Now, I guess we should define gaming universe. I wanted to have this topic so we could kind of talk about games that weren't part of a franchise until 2016.
Right.
And it's kind of hard to be like, what is that, like best new game or best debut, something like that. It's hard to like define that topic. And I think this is a good best new gaming universe kind of feels right. But I also feel like it maybe implies that a game should be bigger than what it maybe is. Well,
and that's kind of like what I think about. Is I think about a game that's going to have some sort of longevity,
right?
Either with that game itself just getting a lot of new content, or sequel potential, franchise potential. So that's kind of one thing going against The Witness, right? We don't really expect there to be a Witness 2 or like some sort of Witness.
And I don't necessarily know if I want that to count against the games. If it's not, if it doesn't feel like it's going to be like part of like, I don't want to imply it's going to be like a cinematic universe.
So you're saying like the best setting for an original game?
Yeah, the best, like
something we haven't seen before.
Exactly, kind of just originality, and yeah, basically in the environment, but it could be characters and stuff like that as well. So. With The Witness, I'll say that it did stand out to me that it feels very different from a lot of other games out there. It's quiet,
you're right.
Very, very beautiful. And I really appreciate that. Kind of, especially in this year where we did have so many shooters that were so great, to kind of have this very opposite first-person experience. I thought was, it was a relief almost.
Yeah, my relationship with Witness was strange because I reviewed it, right? I think it's an example of a game you don't necessarily want to review, because to be on that deadline with like those puzzles and just like, it's not a game I don't think you really want to play for 6 hours straight a lot of the time. You just kind of get that fatigue. And so I was almost kind of frustrated with the game while I was playing it. It's something that when I look back on it, I kind of do look back on it more fondly than maybe when I was actually playing it in a way. I think part of that is because it was such a different game than almost anything else I played this year. And a lot of that was that, I guess, I still kind of have this complaint where there was a lot of mystery to that island and kind of mystique to it that didn't really have a payoff, or at least the kind of payoff that I wanted it to have.
Right, yeah.
So it's like kind of cool, like at the time, like, oh, what does this all mean? And then very slowly, I'm like, I don't really think it actually means much of anything. I think it's just cool.
It doesn't mean much in the way of like that we're accustomed to. We expect like there to be a big third act reveal, and it doesn't have anything like that. It just has like, if you continue to scratch into it, you'll find some stuff. And that's actually one of the things I really liked about it is having that huge setup and having that mystery there. And then the game's kind of like, well, it's actually way deeper than that. This is not just a Dan Brown novel. This isn't just like a mystery for mystery's sake. We're actually trying to say something. And I really connected with that in a way that I wasn't expecting. I expected to like the game. I just didn't. I really loved it. It's one of my favorite of the year.
Right.
And a big part of it is just that the aesthetic It is the actual gameplay of solving the puzzles, and it is all that setup of the mystery that was telling something deeper.
That was it was a very pretty game. It definitely was a standout of the year, but I think we have probably some better options here.
Yeah,
if we kind of go through the list.
I think let's talk about Stardew Valley. Did you play Stardew Valley at all?
No, and I should because I freaking love Harvest Moon. This is one of those games that I meant to. In fact, I probably should have put this on that retro thing I was just talking about, because it's like that retro style. It's right up my alley. Harvest Moon 64 I played that back when it was new, and it was kind of one of the first real kind of simmy games that I really got into at all. It seemed kind of different, like, especially back then. I wasn't playing a lot of games where I wasn't, platforming or, just kind of going to an end of a level. It was also the first game I ever played where my character could marry somebody. And like 12-year-old me, it was like, oh my God, I have a girlfriend. Right? It was just little, and it just sounds like, and like they still make Harvest Moon games, and a lot of times, but people say they're pretty good, but it just sounds like Stardew Valley was really kind of getting a lot of attention.
Stardew Valley, what it does is it kind of combines all the things you like about Harvest Moon that you were just mentioning, and it doesn't like abandon any of them. It just sort of builds on top of everything that was already there in a smart and interesting way. And it's just easy to lose hours and hours to that game. I played it a ton in like 2 sittings when I was traveling a bunch, and that's kind of all I put into it. I want to go back to it. But I'm like, it felt like a new way of doing retro games. We've gotten a lot of retro platformers. We've gotten a lot of
Metroidvanias and stuff like that.
Metroidvania and like those the games where you go in, you die, and you start over. Roguelikes, yes. We got a ton of retro games. Yes, you're on it, Mike. We got a ton of those. I think this kind of opens the door for people to say, well, there's these other genres that were on 16 and 8-bit consoles that we could bring forward and don't have to do much to change them to make people want to play them again. And I really like that a lot.
Do you think it's fair to say Stardew Valley was kind of this year's Undertale?
Yes. I think that it's fair as far as,
obviously very different games.
As far as it needs to be. It's not like, it's not a 1-to-1 thing.
No, but you know what I mean.
What you're saying there definitely tracks for me.
Kind of like the indie darling that's like this kind of like kind of quirky, not as quirky as Undertale. Undertale was like,
right.
It was about as quirky gets, and I think that's kind of why some people love it and some people don't get into it. But yeah, there's some similarities there.
Yeah. So let's see. Is there one on this list you want to talk about before we get to the one?
Did you play Inside?
I didn't. I was kind of hoping you could talk about that a little.
I did, and I liked Inside, but some people really like Inside.
Right. Now, this is from the developer that made was that Black and White?
Limbo. This is the Limbo people. It's very Limbo-esque, right? Yeah. You get that feel like this is kind of Limbo, like, this is like the next step. It's definitely a prettier game. Like one of my favorite things that the game did was that it is 2D the entire time, right? But like all the things on the foreground and the background, like they don't act like they're on a 2D plane. Like things are kind of coming at you or away at you in a way, or like you almost just like feel like your character happens to be going down this path. But yeah, that was interesting. But besides that, I mean, aesthetically, it was kind of another like like the whole thing going on that you kind of pick up on. It's cool because it's just organically told with no dialogue or text or anything. Is that people are being enslaved by some kind of government agency and you're trying to run away from them, and then it just kind of starts getting really weird. It has like a very Brave New World or 1984 kind of thing to it, and it's a cool thing, and it definitely works for that game. I don't know if it was that creative or innovative that it sticks out crazily to me.
It definitely seems like the natural evolution of Limbo to me. When I look at and I haven't played it, but when I look at screenshots and videos, I'm like, I remember playing Limbo, and this looks like it's from the people that made Limbo, and they've put a ton of years into a new game, and this seems like the obvious result of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good game.
Right.
I don't know if it's the best new universe.
Yeah. Let's see. I don't think either of us played Abzu, but it's that underwater sort of Metroidvania, I think, and it looked cool. But I don't think I'm ever going to be the person that loves an underwater game.
No, if I was going to talk about some new Metroidvania thing, it'd probably be Owlboy, and that's even then that's a game I would play it, but just that looks more interesting to me.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And Last Guardian, have you put any time to that?
No, God, man, I feel like I swear I play games.
I know, right?
Say no to everything on this maybe we're part of the problem. We just play.
We only
sequels
play sequels.
And shit.
I mean, to be fair, Last Guardian feels like a sequel to the Ueda trilogy or whatever.
Sure.
And it's I played it, I reviewed it, I liked it. It's a very solid game. It's especially if you like Ueda games.
Is that kind of upsetting though? Because like you don't want the third part of the Eco Shadow of the Colossus thing. You don't want to be saying that's a solid game. It was good. It was an 8, right? Yeah. You don't want to say that. You want that to be like a new Zelda comes out or something like that, right? Like it should be a big deal.
And the thing is that what's frustrating about the game is that there are parts of it that feel like that. Oh my God, this is like something new, and it all has to do with your relationship with Trico, which is the big bird, cat, dog, giant creature that you are interacting with throughout most of the game. And those interactions feel so much like communication, like actual communication, like the way we communicate with animals now. Like except for Penny, who's just a dumb dog. Yeah, but like when I talk to my cat, my cat sort of gets a few things here and there. It's not as social as some other animals.
Sure,
but my cat basically kind of can read my emotions and do some things, and he knows when I want him to come downstairs. And having that click in the game with Trico was special. That was interesting in a way that no other game was this year. No other game really ever has been.
But outside of that, maybe do you think the game still felt pretty similar to what Shadow of the Colossus and Eco were doing? Where
yes,
maybe
it felt like a mashup of those two games, and it was just in the end, it's just a puzzle game. Like it doesn't really take that communication. That's the thing it's doing that's special, and it doesn't really build on that so much as it's using that as the tool for solving its environmental puzzles, and that was a little disappointing. Not disappointing to the point where it's a bad game by any means. It's got a bad camera. It has frustrating controls. A
lot of the PlayStation 2 problems.
Right, exactly. Yes, for real. It felt like a PlayStation 2 game in those respects. But it's still, it just didn't capitalize on the thing it was doing that was so special. And it always kind of makes me hesitate from, really saying, I gave it like an 85, I think, or something. And I wouldn't want to put it at the top of this list. So,
what do you think is kind of next? Are they going to make it one of those? Or is that it for that whole kind of?
It's it for like Ueda and Sony and that sort of, like he'll do something again, I'm sure, but it's not going to be on that scale. I mean, this is another conversation. This is probably something we should talk about when we get into when we're looking ahead to 2017. Like beyond Naughty Dog, who's making games like that? Like those huge first party single player AAA experiences. It feels like they are. It just feels like it doesn't make sense except for Naughty Dog, because Naughty Dog just does it so well that why even try? So I did put The Division on here at the last second. I think it's a good military setting. It's a good apocalyptic setting, but I think that's all we have to say about it.
I think so.
Yeah, there's not much else to say there. So let's get into it, Mike.
Let's talk about the winner.
Yeah, I think this is probably it. So what are your thoughts about Overwatch as a new gaming universe in a universe of sequels?
It works so well, right? Because it kind of has that MOBA-y thing where it's just like the cast of characters can almost seem random, and it's so many MOBAs they do, right? You have like a pirate and a wizard and a robot, and it's like okay, but Overwatch it kind of has this superhero theme, but there's this slightly futuristic thing to all of it, right? Like these people all clearly look like they are from the same game in the same universe. Right. And I think one of the things that makes it interesting is the way that Blizzard has very carefully and slowly doled out any actual information about characters' backgrounds, about what the story might be, what happened in the past. So anytime that does happen, you kind of like learn just a little bit more. Like there's that new Christmas comic, and outside of the whole Tracer thing, there's just like that collage of like what people might be doing, and it was like I was just scanning it, being like, oh my god, Torbjorn has a wife, and who's that letter from that Mercy is reading, and just stuff like this, right? It's just like just even though it's not a single player game, just like in the maps, right? There's just so much interesting detail, and the universe just feels so well developed. It just comes through like the animation, like in the emotes and the the way they just like the poses you can get, all this weird stuff. It's just I think it's just definitely the most interesting kind of video game world we've seen in a while.
Yeah, what it does is it reminds me that you don't need to have all the cutscenes and the storytelling, or like Street Fighter, like where they have like the snippets at the end where when you played like the single player mode in like Street Fighter 2, and it's like, oh, Guile, he avenged his best friend, and it was like 2 lines, and it's like, you don't need that. Like, your characters are interesting enough, and Overwatch just totally turns into that. It's like, we're gonna characterize everything. Every costume decision is gonna say something about this character. Every way, the way they stand, the way they move, like you were saying, the emotes, and then the world is gonna say something. Like, a lot of the maps are in cities where these characters are from, or they have a huge attachment to, and going to those places and experiencing them. You learn about the world, you get connected to the world, and you get connected to the characters in a really strong way, and it is impressive to a point where I'm blown away. Almost like every couple of like times I boot up the game, I get reminded of all these small ways that Blizzard's doing something that no one else can really handle.
The production value just on that game is ridiculous for a team-based shooter. Which you like when Team Fortress 2 came out. It was, as good as it was, Valve released it as 1/3 of a package in the orange box, right? Like, they clearly didn't almost have enough confidence in it in a weird way. It was like, it's just like, yeah, this is part of this, and it's, they did work in it and all stuff, but I don't think they did as much attention to that as Blizzard did with Overwatch. It's just crazy how much.
Yeah, I mean, there's a story behind that too, of course. Like, Overwatch started out as the MMO Titan follow-up to World of Warcraft. And it feels like all this world building they did for that, they weren't married to it to the point where they're like, well, we have to find a way to cram all this story stuff into the game. They're like, no, we're gonna build those into the characters, and we're gonna take what we need, and we can always draw on this more later if we need to.
Now that is what I wonder. Is that the carryover from Titan? Was it kind of setting, you think? But do we know that?
Well, I mean,
I'm just curious about it.
I'm pretty sure that it was the story at the time was the game, Titan was turned into Overwatch.
Right, but I still just always wonder what that means exactly.
I mean, I think it probably means that a lot of the ideas they had for character classes and stuff like that got put into these characters that we're playing now. But that's not, I mean, obviously that you can't just do that and have like, oh, now we have this amazing first-person shooter world that's fun to play. Obviously, Blizzard's has their own special magic that they are putting into this stuff that sets it apart from everyone else.
Right. I almost wonder too if like the fact that there isn't a lot of in-game storytelling helps Overwatch. Because Blizzard it helps for me, and I think it also plays to Blizzard's strengths. Because I think they are good at world building, and then at storytelling, maybe not so much sometimes. Mm-hmm. Like, I remember like Diablo 3, like just like the story in that per se was pretty bad. A lot of the times the writing in Warcraft like is not all that good sometimes. Even that's gotten better.
It's most developers, like, they hire great artists. Some of the best artists, like the best artists like coming out of school, one of the highest paying jobs they can get is like working at a developer. Especially if they're like a technically trained artist. And so if like you go into this business, you're going to end up making games. And, they're also going to be like, well, okay, what does this mean? Like, what's the story behind this?
Yeah,
I think that's where it's going to fall apart for artists.
I think Blizzard is kind of old school in that a lot of the people on their staff that are like there as storytellers were originally like programmers and artists and stuff like that kind of like were filling in those gaps as needed. Like, not necessarily people who came from like, actual storytelling fields or stuff like that.
But even
whereas now a lot of people
works.
What? Yeah.
Yeah, it never works. Like when you get like a dedicated storyteller in a game. I mean, this is just me. I think most gaming stories stink. There are a few that I think are okay, like Uncharted 4. I like that story. I thought the characters were far more interesting. I care way more about the characters than I do the story, and I think that's the common thing here among all these really good games where you have characters that you associate with. That's the thing you want to spend more time with. I want to spend more time with Tracer and with Torbjorn and all that stuff because they're interesting. I don't really necessarily care about the plots that they get involved
right.
in.
Yeah, I don't necessarily care like is are they going to I don't know fight the Talons or something?
Yeah,
or something happened.
Yeah,
like it almost seems like the plot of this game is like taking place after the actual like war that everyone talks about, right? It almost seems like the big event and like the dissolution of Overwatch already happened, and it's like okay,
yeah. So yeah, we could kind of bring our own stuff to it, enjoy these characters, and get a ton out of it. And I think it's like in any other year, I don't know. It might have been a close one among these other games, but in a year when Overwatch comes out, it's just so much far and away better than anything else in terms of bringing something new to gaming that it's clearly the winner of this category, I think.
It's funny because the other game that I almost think of here, it doesn't really count, but it's Titanfall 2. Because even though we were in that universe before, and that was a game where it maybe didn't do those things as well, where it was mostly just multiplayer and you even had that single player campaign, but you still didn't really feel invested in any of those characters or any really even that world. And Titanfall 2's campaign was like the first thing that actually did make me interested in that like universe a bit.
Right, and a lot of that was like the characters. BT was very good. Things like that. So, but yeah, you're right. It doesn't count, but yeah, Titanfall 2 is maybe like the closest one for me if we were like bringing in like all these games that got released in 2016. Okay, that wraps up that category. Overwatch is the best new gaming universe in 2016. We predicted that one. I think like if you listen to the episode right before this one, the other games, GB Rewind 2016 episode, the end, I think me and Mike both hint that it was going to win. So yeah, no surprise there. That's part 2 of our GB Rewind 2016 feature. We'll be back with more. You can get me on Twitter at Jeff Grubb. Get Mike at Tolkoto. He also has his podcast at ebpodcast.com. Check that out. And you can always get us on GamesBeat.com or email us at gamespluspodcast@venturebeat.com.